Yeah, hi all. Good evening. And this is Chandra, and I'm having like 7+ years of experience on DevOps and a multi-cloud, and I'm from Hyderabad. Okay. Currently working on aviation projects and feel I'm open to work on the freelancing as well. Okay, and yep. So I will be the instructor towards our entire of our sessions, and yeah, I would like each one of you please go ahead with your introductions so that it will be helpful for me to know at what expertise level that you have been, and even if you're fresh, feel free to open and let me know so that it will help me to brief the concepts as well. Okay, and yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, fine. So before going into our demo session, so definitely you might be having some of a research why we need to go for this DevOps. So each and everyone will be having their own point of interest over this particular DevOps. So some of our friends might be suggesting us or researching in the market. So there is a lot, right? So why Azure DevOps and why we definitely need to go for the DevOps and why today there is a DevOps in the market, right? And what is a DevOps first? So most of the people say a lot of meanings, lot of definitions and all that. But what exactly the DevOps is, right? Yeah, I'll just okay. So DevOps. Okay. So this particular DevOps. So in my point of view, so as per my respective experience, I would like to say this DevOps is nothing but a set of practices and a set of tools. Okay. The way the methods that we use and whatever the practices to make the automations. So some people will be interested. So let me go in it brief. Okay. So I might not be a person who might know a PowerShell, Linux, Python, Java, or C, C++. So a person cannot be known each and every programming language or a scripting language. Definitely, that is there is no point of knowing everything, right? So this particular DevOps, this is not a platform dependent first thing. So if you are like your respective senior or your colleague, so if he is trying to write a respective activity, let me say activity, if he or she is trying to write the activity in a so-called Python, and if you are not familiar with that particular Python, so no need to stop there. So whatever the activity that he or she writing in a Python, we can replicate that into another scripting languages that we know or any other programming languages that we know. Okay, so you can either use a C, Java, or any scripting languages, anything. Okay, so here DevOps set off a practices and the respective tools. Majorly, this particular DevOps is a pack of tools. Okay, DevOps itself is not a tool. DevOps having a respective set of tools which will help us to make our process. So which process? Here again, the process means either a software deliveries or a developments or the respective teams itself. Okay, anything it might be, whatever the tools that we use. For example, one of a person said they or service now. So service now, like where we used to see some a ticketing tool. Most familiar, we used to see that it is some of a ticketing tool, a beautiful tool that was again, which helps us like in escalations or change requests or anything. Right here in the DevOps itself, that particular service now will be a part, some areas, and in some places, based upon the budget, the people will be going with another tools like Zia, Azure bots, or a lot of other open source things, right? And even in a development areas in the self, um, this particular DevOps helps us to minimize or reduce the gap between our respective development activities and respect to operation things. Okay? Before this particular DevOps, before this particular DevOps, if you want to build a respective website, or if you want to build a respective service, those days the people used to take a lot of time because the lack of exposure. And this particular DevOps comes into the light by 2009. Okay, so from the 2009, this particular DevOps is very familiar in a development areas, and this was developed by the team which was led by Patrick. Okay, and before this particular 2009, isn't there any DevOps means? No, there is a DevOps before that as well. But here, before 2009, whatever the methods our elders who has provided us this particular path, right? They also use a certain procedures, and that particular procedures has been improvised, we can say. The procedures which was led earlier before this particular DevOps, those get improvised, and the entire package, it was called as a DevOps. Okay, so before 2009, some might question, so before 2009, how the people is going to make a website? So isn't there any of the websites before 2009? Definitely there are a lot of websites, and whatever the procedures that we are following today, these was followed at the initial days itself. Okay, and here, if a website needs to be developed, so which areas are very important, right? And this particular DevOps used to have a life cycle. So this particular DevOps framework was having a respective life cycle, so which will help us to create a respective activities, or to go in a like a POC kind of a things, or a development areas, and monitoring areas, everything. But the life cycle itself defines what we want for the development. Okay, so can someone mute one of the person, just mute and answer this, just casual question itself. So before going to the, what is the thing that we needs to do? Anyone? Before going to the development, see, I am having a respect idea to develop a website, right? What is the first step that I needs to do? What is the initial step that anyone or everyone should do before
We
the
require the
development?
hardware, right?
uh, can you be a bit loud?
Yeah, we require the hardware, so we can build on the hardware, right?
Yeah, that's
Requirement gathering.
yeah, yeah, that's true. A requirement gathering, yeah, hardware we definitely required, that was the other part. But at the time of a development, the start of a development, we definitely need to gather the requirements. and which we call today the planning phase, or which we call, if the teams are following some agile, and those people will be calling that as a refinement. And if you want to review retrospectives, right? So what is the initial phase that we need to do before the development is nothing but the refinement, which is nothing but a planning. Here the refinement is not specific towards a development team itself. That means if the respective project is on the .NET, so the refinement is not specific towards a .NET team itself. So .NET team, which is a development team, will have its own priority, what they want to take up for the development and all that. And the DevOps team will be having their own backlogs, like what is the pipeline that you needs to be developed, or what is the infrastructure that you needs to create, or even our testing teams, or we call like QA teams. So they need to work on the scripting areas, so to test, and even our monitoring teams, like we call L1, L2 teams, or support teams, all these, right? So even they will be having their specific goals, like how the resource needs to be monitored, if there is any spike. So that spike and all technical terms we are going to see in further sessions. Okay, just for the brief I'm going. So each and every team is going to have their own refinement, and that particular thing will be calling as a planning phase in a DevOps. Okay, so this particular planning is going to see, as part of our course, we are going to see it in Azure boards. Okay, which is nothing but our, okay, we can call something like a ticketing service. Okay, where our daily activities will be tracked. And okay, as we are seeing that initial phase is a planning in a DevOps, what exactly DevOps will be doing? What exactly the DevOps will be doing, right? The initial definition that I said, a set of tools and a set of practices. Okay, here the infrastructure, whatever the infrastructure which comes under the cloud part, will be dealt by infra team. And our developers, .NET or whatever, Java or Python developers, they will be looking over their code development itself, UI, UX part, everything, right? Our particular part is majorly the major task of a DevOps engineer here. The major task, there are a lot of things that needs to do, definitely, but the major portion that we needs to do in this particular area, where the servers will be handled by the infra team and the code part will be dealt by the development team, right? The major area that we needs to cover is whatever the code that was developed by the IT team or a development team, sorry, whatever the code that was developed by the development team, that particular application code needs to be delivered towards our cloud part. See, for example, imagine this is one of a cloud. I'm just going with Azure, and let me take one of the server here. See, I'm just taking one of some web server. Okay, and there is a development team. So this is a development team, and this particular development team will follow a certain methods. So it might be an agile process, or it might be a scrum, or it might be a CMMI or a basic. Okay, these are the process. That means you might be heard of a sprints, right? And development team will be following a sprint planning on so and so. So some people will be following a 2 weeks a sprint, or some people will be following 3 weeks a sprint, and some will follow just 1 week a sprint. Depends upon their requirements, right? So here, our respective development team will develop a respective code part, application code in that particular sprint using a certain tools called distributed version control system. We call that VCS, version control system. Okay, it might be a distributed version control system or a centralized. So soon we will see which is a better one. Okay, so this particular version control system tools like GitHub or Bitbucket or our respective Azure Repos, and there are a lot more version control systems out there. Most familiarly, we will be using GitHub, and if someone is habituated towards an Azure DevOps, they will be using the Azure Repos. And someone, if they want to go for some open source license, they will be going with the Atlassian tool called Bitbucket. Okay, so let me take a GitHub here. So this is the place where our respective developer will be placing their application code. I'm just giving an example. Okay, so that the development activity will be completed, but this particular application code should be available here in the web server. Okay, so this particular web server might be having one of its domain name, something like, I'm just like placing it with example.com. Okay, so whatever the application that will be available inside of this web server, that can be seen by common audience using this particular URL, example.com. Okay, but the application code is here in the GitHub. How to make that particular application code available here using a DevOps is here. Once the respective activity, once the developers place their code into a respective VCS or some other storage space, we will be utilizing a pipelines concept, which will be calling as a CI/CD. Okay, in coming sessions we will see in a brief, but in deep. So I'm just giving a brief over here. Okay, so once the respective code is pushed out towards here, the storage space, using this particular CI/CD procedures or tools that we use. Some people will be going with the open source tools like a Jenkins, Bamboo, or GitHub Actions, or in our Azure itself we had an Azure pipelines. There are a lot of options in a CI/CD. The tools that we can use in a CI/CD, there are a lot of options. Open source is there, license is there. So based upon the security that we are placing toward our environment, we will be choosing a respective procedure. Okay, using this particular CI/CD procedure, we will be transferring our respective application code towards here into the respective web server. So from this particular GitHub space, using the CI/CD flow, using a continuous integration and a continuous delivery or a continuous deployment procedure, we are transferring the code towards this particular web servers. Once the application code is available here and running smooth, so the common audience, the public, can be accessed using this particular domain. name. And meanwhile, there will be a monitoring team which used to monitor this particular web servers, and there will be a testing team which used to test this particular example.com site, how it is working and how it is loading, what is a load test, regression test. Oh, sorry, there will be a lot of scenarios that needs to be tested before going it into a live. Okay, the common thing that we need to do in a demo as a DevOps engineer is this particular CI/CD setup. This particular CI/CD setup will be created by using some of scripts. So here in the scripting format, we will be using sometimes PowerShell, Bash, Python, Java, or anything that you are familiar with. For example, if I am going to write, see, if you are going to an interview, okay, an interviewer asks you a question, write some Fibonacci series, and he said that write in a familiar programming language. Then what we will be doing? So if I know a Java, I will be writing it in a Java, and if I know a Python, so I will be writing it in a Python, right? No platform dependent, right? Here also the same. If I write this particular script, so there is an automation script which will copy a respective file, and that particular file, in that particular file, I need to edit one of an value, or we can say I need to update one of a value in that particular file, and later that particular file should be saved and it should be packaged, right? I will be writing it using some of a bash script, okay, and there will be some other who will be writing it like a Shiv or some other. If they are familiar with some PowerShell, they will be writing it with some PowerShell script. So like finally what we need to do is, whatever the programming language or whatever the script that you use whatever you are familiar with, but create a logic which update the file and save that particular file and packaged it. That's up to your wish. So no one is going to question you why you write this particular PowerShell script, because you are familiar with that PowerShell, and some other will be familiar with some bash script. They will be writing in that bash script, the other pipeline. So no one will be familiar with all the scripting languages, all the programming languages. We need an alternatives. So if someone a programming language, so if you know Java, so I might be knowing a programming. If you know the bash, I might be knowing a PowerShell. It's like that. All the four may or may not be known by me, but I should know what's the alternative that I can do, the alternative script, the automation script. So generally, if a file needs to be updated, what is the manual procedure that I will be doing? First thing is, I will be locating that particular file in which folder it was there, and later I will just open that particular file. So it might be some Notepad Plus or Visual Studio or some other tools. Later I will just update that particular value, and I will just use some Control S or either a save option. And after that, after saving that particular file, I will be going and doing some compress this particular file into a so-called zip format or a so-called zip or whatever format that we are familiar with, right? So that is the manual procedure that I will be doing. But in an automation, you will be writing a commands, a PowerShell, Bash, Python, or a Java, anything. anything that you are familiar with. So there is no limit that you need to use only this particular task or this particular script itself. Okay, so the ultimate goal should be you should write a script which will transfer or which will update that particular file and save that as a package. That is your goal, right? So this particular CI/CD is that. So using our pipelines, CI/CD pipelines, we will be writing a scripts for the automation activities. We will be writing a scripts for packaging the files. We will be writing a scripts for building building the respective code. So based upon our programming language, based upon our application code that was developed. So if it is something like a .NET, we will be following a certain build procedures. And if it is a Java, we will be following certain build procedures like a Maven or and Gradle. So certain kinds. If it is a Python, its respective build process. And you no need to worry that. So whatever the like application code that was written, so the if you are not familiar with that particular application code, for example, until today you had worked on a couple of projects where there you had worked on a .NET and you had worked on a Java, but in your current project the application code was written on a Python and you were not familiar what kind of a build activity that you needs to do. No need to worry, just we can question the developers what is the build area that you had done manually when you were developing the code. So when the developers are building the respective code, they will be undergoing a respective build procedures in a manual way. So we will be reaching out towards developers and taking the inputs from the developers. What is the manual procedures that they had done? And that particular manual procedure will be placed in this particular CI/CD pipelines. And after that, we will be packaging a respective code, application code. And we will send that particular application code into a certain security scans as well. Some of the people will be using a SOAR, some will be using a lint or lot of other tools over there for scanning the respective code, either a static code or certain things. Code analysis, static code analysis part. That means verify how the developers have written the code, whether they had written as per ASCII standards or not. Right? So that particular part also we will be dealing in the CI/CD, and later if after verifying all of these steps, if we feel that our respective application code is safe and secure, then we will be sending that particular application code into our web servers. And even here in the web servers, after reaching out that application code into the web servers, there will be a sanity testing and application scans, application security scans. There are a lot of other things that will be undergoing, right? In the mean, our DevOps engineers major thing is to create the CI/CD process. This is the measure as a DevOps engineer that you need to. And apart from this particular deployment procedures, you need to work, or a DevOps engineer will be working on creating this particular web servers, using an code. It might be a Terraform, IAC tools, infrastructure as code. That means our web server, someone from infra team might be creating that particular server manually. So he might be going into the cloud and creating the respective service manually. But we as a DevOps engineers will be writing an IAC format for this particular web server using any of the tool like Terraform, or if you are using an Azure, you will be undergoing this ARM templates, Azure Resource Manager templates. And if you are going under AWS, so you will be using some cloud formation templates, right? So based upon in a common, everyone will be going for Terraform. So that is a global IAC thing, so where every respective cloud can utilize. Okay, so using a Terraform we need to develop a particular web server. That means we are making the infra team jobs easier by creating Terraform code, so that whenever they want to create a server, they can just run that particular script. And we are creating that, right? And not only that, so there will be a configuration management tools like Ansible, Chef, Puppet. Also, there will be a lot of things. Any one of a tool, if you are familiar, that is fine. For example, I'm just going to take the Ansible for the configuration management tool. That means, imagine for last year I had given 100 virtual mission, or see 10 virtual missions, or 10 missions to be created, or a 10 servers to be created, right? So 10 server means she need to go towards a cloud console, cloud part. She need to go each and every respect to server manual creation. So it might be taking almost some, if we take 10 minutes for each one, it will taking almost 100 minutes. But this particular configuration management tools, okay, this particular configuration management tools will be doing within minutes, like within 5 minutes or 10 minutes based on the process. All the 10 be created. Or for example, there is 10 machines in your office, there is 10 machines. Like a few people are working in an under a respective project. And for your 10 people, whatever the machines that you use, that means whatever the laptops that you use, there is an upgrade, or there is some private tool or .exe file that was developed by your team, and that needs to be used within your team itself. How our IT admin will be doing? So they will be connecting towards us through remote connection, and they will be installing that. That is one of a procedure. Or the other thing is, they will just place that particular script and run it in the IP address, office IP addresses, so that whatever the missions that was connected, everything will get updated with that exe file. That is the easiest way. So everywhere there is a DevOps. If you look, there is a place at every respective teams or departments. There is a DevOps where we can improvise, right? And here, after this particular our major thing, I'm just going back towards the life cycle of our DevOps. Okay, but this is, as a DevOps engineer, this is your major goal. Apart from this, soon in our respective sessions, we are going to deal what a DevOps engineer is going to do, what a site reliability engineer is going to do, what a DevSecOps engineer is going to do, what a cloud engineer is going to do. Everything we are going to check. Okay, and yeah, I'm going back to the life cycle of a DevOps. After this particular planning, so definitely the development team will, or the respective DevOps team will undergo a respective development activities like developing a respective code or developing a respective pipelines, certain things. or QA team, they will be writing their own scripts, right? So like that. And later, after this particular code part was done, the major area is here. So once the code part was completed, the code will be stored in some VCS, that is a version control system. From there, we will be undergoing a build procedure for a development activities. For a development activities only, we will be undergoing this build procedures. Whatever the code that was developed by the development team, for that particular development code, we will be undergoing a respective build based upon a programming language or certain things. If it is an Angular, there will be one build process. If it is a React, there will be one build process. So certain things. Okay. And later this particular build, we will be undergoing with a test. Testing the respective codes part. So up to what standards the respective code was created, whether it is up to the standards or not, everything will be tested. Once this testing is done, we as a DevOps engineers will be undergoing a release format. We'll be undergoing a release procedure, which is nothing but this particular CI/CD procedure. In this particular phase, we will be developing respective pipelines, whatever the requirement that was set by development team. And later, we will be undergoing a deployment procedure. So that means running scripts to update the code into a web application servers. Okay. And later this particular thing, we will be having some operations. And finally, the monitoring. Finally, the monitoring. So this particular monitoring will be dealt by the support team and all that. Okay. So once this particular procedure, see, first thing is the development team. Let me talk about a development activity itself. Okay. For each and every team, there will be their own life cycle. Let me brief about the development area. So the development team will come and plan their respective activities, and they will be placing it on the Azure boards or a Jira board or some other tools. And later, when their respective development activity was started and finished, they will be storing it into a respective version control system. It might be a centralized or it might be a distributed version control system. And later the part will be dealt by the DevOps engineers. Once the application code was stored into a version control system, version control systems, our part will start. So we need to build that particular application code, and we need to test that particular application code, and finally we need to make that ready for the release. We need to make that ready for the release. That means packaging. See, for example, if you want to install a respective tool in your Windows machine, which extension of the files that you will be downloading? See, for example, there is a plugin or there is a software which I need to install into my respective Windows machine. So with what extension that package I will be downloading? So which is having .msi, Microsoft installer or certain things. So .msi file will be installed into Windows machines. .exe, we will be installing that into our respective Android or the respective missions anywhere, everywhere where we required. And if it is like iOS, it is AAB. So certain extensions, right? So if it is a Linux, there will be a certain extension. For example, I will just show you here. Okay, Oracle, sorry, Java downloads. Let me go here. See, I'm just going for the Windows 64 installer. So we will be having .exe and MSI Microsoft installer. See .msi or .zip, whatever the format, or Mac OS. See DMC, tar.cz, certain things, and a Linux tar.cz, RPM, certain DBN, certain extensions, right? So what are these particular extensions? Where you will be getting these particular extensions is, so you will make that particular extensions available at this particular release procedure. Remember this, at a release process we will convert our application code. At a release process we will convert our application code into a respective packages. So it might be .exe, it might be a .msi, or it might be .deb or .rpm, .tar, whatever, .var, .jar, whatever format package that we want. We will be converting our application code into package at this release. This is very important. These particular phases are very important in the entire process. And later, that particular converted package will be undergo with the deployment scenario. So using this particular deployment phase, we will take this particular package and we will make this package available at the web servers. Okay, once it reached out towards a web server, that particular package reached out towards a web servers, the package will be unzipped or untar. That means we are extracting that particular package. We are extracting that particular package. So why we need to do a packaging? We'll soon know that. What is the advantage of a packaging? Without the packaging also you can do, but what is the advantage of the packaging? Soon you will be knowing that. Okay, once the package reached out towards a web server, we will be doing an extracting part so that the files will be spread in the server, and the respective path which was given for the operations and which was assigned towards this particular domain namespace, DNS URL, our application will be visible. And later our operations team and they will be looking over how the web server is working. So whether the web server is giving a right responses or not, whether the users are reaching out towards the server or not, what kind of a responses they are getting, whether it is a 400, 404, 500 or a 200, 301 or 302, what kind of a responses that they are getting. So the monitoring team will look over this web server if there is any issue or whether it is working fine. And again starts, again the respective scenario start, again the development team once will start with the planning for the next phase. So the cycle will be keep on repeating. Once the development team create their own the code, so they will start again the planning for the another improvements. So the cycle is keep on iterating itself. This is a complete loop. In this particular diagram, so this particular entire phases we call a DevOps. Entire of this particular section will be called as a DevOps. See here, I am not using here single tool. As a DevOps, I am not using here a single tool. Here I am using an Azure bots. Here I am using version control systems. Here I am using pipelines. Here I am using some Sonar Cube or some other testing tools. And here I am using some packaging formats. Here again the pipelines, and next the cloud services and the respective cloud services for the monitoring. That means a different services. It's not a single service. It is not a single tool. The DevOps is not a single service or a single tool to operate. It is a combination of set of services or a set of practices or a set of tools which will help us to deliver the things with a smooth and a secure way. Okay. Someone will be saying like a DevOps is nothing but a development and operation team, the combination of a development and the operations teams. Okay. Or the bridge between a DevOps, the development and the operations team. That is a somewhat a high level, but in a brief, the DevOps means it is a set of a tools or a set of a services or a set of practices that you use to deliver the things in a secure and a smooth way towards your end space. Okay, so this is the DevOps, and here we are going to see a lot of tools, and we are going to see the scripting languages. We are going to see a different formats and different projects as well. Okay, so let me give you a brief what are the things that we are going to cover in the entire of our course. And as part of a DevOps, the first thing that we will be dealing is, let me go in a brief. So we will be looking over the version control systems. Okay, so which type of a version control system suits for the best? Either it is a centralized or distributed. What is the difference between them? Where does the GitHub comes? What is a GitHub first? What is a Git? And what is an Azure Repos? How do they operate? How you need to do a branching strategies? How you need to make the code secure? How you need to place at the approvals, workflows, all that particular part we are going to see in version control system. And later we will be looking over on the Linux script. No worries, even if you are a fresher or a not known towards this particular Linux, no worries, even if you are a fresher, you will be undergoing with the Linux basics and how to write the scripts, bash scripts and everything. You will be prepared, or you will be given each and every concept, so how to write the scripts and all that. Okay, and later PowerShell. So if you are going to use a Windows based machines in your works time, it's better to use some PowerShell. Okay, for that feasibility I just placed two scripting languages, Linux and a PowerShell. Logic will be the same, just the script, whatever the syntaxes will be differ. Okay, and soon after this we will be undergoing with the DevOps practices. So what is, or let me give you with containerization concepts. What is a Docker and why we need to use the Docker and where to use a Docker. What is a containerization? What is a virtualization? What is the difference between the both? And why today the Docker, Kubernetes, all these was here frequently. Okay, we will look on the Docker and later Kubernetes. What is a Kubernetes? what is a Kubernetes cluster, what is a pod, everything in detail we will be looking over when we are discussing on a Kubernetes. So why today Kubernetes is so given a hype for the Kubernetes? What is whether Kubernetes is really having that much importance? We will be looking over that. And later Terraform. So how to write the script or the code, how to write the code for your respective servers to make them automation. Okay, and later the Ansible, which will be covered the configuration management tools. Okay, so how to automate the script, how to run the script at a time in 100 missions, how to do that. Okay, for example, if I have given if I was given a task, run this particular script in 100 virtual missions, that means I need to log into each and every mission. If I don't know this particular Ansible, I need to log into each and every virtual mission and I need to execute that particular script. But if I know this particular Ansible, it is just a minute. It is just a minute to execute that particular script in all that 100 missions at a time. So here we will be seeing what is a serial and what is a parallel way of a deployments or parallel way of a running the scripts. And later Argo CD, where we are going to see the orchestration of the container orchestrations using this Argo CD. We are going to see that. Okay, and later we will be looking over on the cloud concepts, Azure Mantra ID, so where the user management, access management, role management, everything is comes into the place, or the first service that we needs to know before you are starting a DevOps engineer, or as a DevOps engineer, or before you are going to start your career as a cloud engineer or anything related to the cloud and the DevOps, you should be familiar with this Azure Entra ID in the Azure. And if you are using AWS, it is AWS IAM, Identity Access Management. Okay, so each and every cloud will be having its own user management service. And later we will be introduced towards a virtual missions. Okay, so how to create a virtual missions and how to create different kinds of a virtual missions and how to use that particular virtual missions as a bot, how you are going to use that particular virtual mission as a bot, that also we are going to see. And later the app services, so which is nothing but the web application servers. Based upon your programming language, you will be creating a respective application services. And here itself we will be dealing on a database servers as well, whether you are using a NoSQL, MySQL, Postgres, any kind. So how to create a database servers, how to integrate the database server with your application servers, we are going to see that. And later the storage accounts, Azure storage accounts. So if, for example, if you are having some of the secrets related towards your application, if you want to store that particular secret file, where do you going to store that? In a secure way, and it should be accessible by all of your teammates, right? So that particular, we are going to see different kinds of storages here. And later will be some, along with the storage accounts, we will be seeing a key vaults, secret managers, or a lot of things we are going to see. After that, we are going to look on ACR, Azure Container Registries. Whatever the thing that we create using a Docker, that particular Docker outputs will be stored here in the ACR, Azure Container Registries, which is nothing but a Docker images. Okay. Along with that ACR, we are going to see AKS, Azure Kubernetes Services. Okay. Whatever the images that was placed here, that particular images will be deployed into AKS using our Azure pipelines. How we are going to do that? What is a manifest files? What is a daemon sets, pods? So there is a lot of stuff that we need to deal with Kubernetes. Okay. Now after this, for the monitoring activity of this particular container based applications, for virtualized, in the virtualization manner, we will be having a specific monitoring things, and in the containerization model, you will be having a specific monitoring thing. So here Prometheus Grafana is going to be dealt, the monitoring of your container based applications. And along with this, we are going to check on the Helm as well. What is a Helm charts, and where do we need to use that, and why we need to use that particular Helm charts, right? So each and every concept will be dealt in detail, from the basic towards advanced. We are going to deal the basic level itself, and for each and every concept you will be given with a specific note, we can say, or a specific PDF based upon the topic. For example, if a VCS, version control system, is covered, so you will be given with some version control system related document. A written document will be provided to you. Okay, so based upon our topics, a respective document will be provided, and all these concepts will be covered using some of minor projects. At least 4 to 5 minor projects will be covered, and a couple of major projects will be covered here. By completion of this particular entire course, by covering all of these 13 different kinds which I have written here, by the end of all of these services, we are going to see 4 to 5 mini projects and a couple of major projects. Okay, and it is going to be a 1 hour session every day, and it will be as from 2.5 months to 3 months. It will vary from 2.5 months to the 3 months, and the sessions will be from Monday to the Friday. And once we are crossed half of our sessions, based upon the interest, on your interest, you will be given inputs for the interviews, or you will be taken under a demo interviews, or we can say like mock interviews. And by the end of our sessions, so we will be giving a certain like we can say this certification related questions. Like for example, if you are undergoing some fundamentals, so fundamental related course related some questions will be given. A frequently asked questions will be given, and you will be questioned and undergoing with some mock interviews. Finally, you will be prepared for interview, and you will be guided for how to create your resume. Okay, the that's all from my end. I'm just stopping the screen. And yeah, I'm open for the questions. Please go ahead with your questions if you have any. And in this entire